Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our 10-minute Bible lesson. We really appreciate you tuning in. If you were watching last time, then you know that we were in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, and we covered the first 6 verses. Well, today we're back in the book of Proverbs and we're back in chapter 3, but we're going to be looking at verses 7 through 12. And so let's go ahead, if you have your Bibles already, let's go ahead and read verses 7 and 8, and let's see if we can see some of the advice that Solomon is given today. So he says, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones." Now, in these 2 verses, there's actually 3 pieces of advice in here that we're to follow. And if we follow them, it tells us that we'll have a healthy life. That's what he says. It'll be health to your flesh, and it'll be also it'll be strength to your bones. Now, when we're watching TV, you can't help but see all of the information that we're given, whether it's in programs or commercials, telling us how to be healthy. And it's just endless. All of them are telling us how to be healthy. But Solomon here, he lists 3 things that you're not going to find on TV. In fact, he says this. He says, "Don't be wise in your own eyes." And I thought that's really a good piece of advice. And I was thinking about what exactly is there when somebody's wise. I think it's kind of like when somebody's kind of cocky, so to speak, or maybe they think they know everything. I've been like that before. I remember kind of being a smart aleck. And the truth of the matter is, even though that was a long time ago, and maybe I was a kid, man, I tell you, it's not a very good virtue. It's not a virtue at all, matter of fact. In fact, we don't like it. We like to be around people that are wise. Listen, we can maybe learn something and soak up some of their wisdom, but to be around people that think they're wise, now that's a different story. And it seems like it's so easy for us. I mean, we just get this really quick when we see somebody that kind of thinks they're wise in their own eyes. And it's also kind of funny that it seems like it's really hidden from our own life when we act like that. So Solomon, he tells us this. Now, don't be wise in your own eyes. Now, there's 2 more things. There's three things. That's the first one. That's the first bit of advice. Now, the second are kind of real. They come together and they're real close together. And those 2 happen to be this: fear the Lord and depart from evil. So that makes up 3. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. Now, why wouldn't a person fear the Lord? Let's think just a minute about how great God is. God is so much greater and so much more powerful, and so much wiser, and so much. I know gooder is not a word, but He's holy. And in fact, we can't even understand the universe. And yet God created the universe, and He's outside of the universe. Plus, He made this planet. He created us. And not only that, all of the ecosystems that support life, He made all of it. Plus, here's something else we need to understand. Our eternal destiny is in His hands. So He has within His power to take life and to give life. Plus, He has the power to allow someone to go to heaven or cast somebody into hell. Why wouldn't you have an awesome fear and respect for a God like that? And not only that, it says that we're to fear the Lord and depart from evil. And a proper understanding and respect for the Lord, surely that would also help us to want to depart from evil. It would make us want to kind of flee those things that are wrong and try to do the things that are right. Now, let's go ahead and look at the next 2 verses. Let's look at verses 8 and 9 and see if there's some more advice. Now, this is different. It's a little bit different type of advice. So let me read these in verses 8 and 9. Solomon says this. He says, "Honor the Lord." Now, just think about that a minute. Now, how is it that Solomon is going to tell us that we can honor the Lord? Here's what he said. He says, "Honor the Lord with your possessions." Now, just think a second about that. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all of your increase. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. So think about this. So how is it that we can honor God? He tells us that we can do that with our possessions. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing I think that comes to mind, at least for me, is that if we understand that the things that we have, the things that we possess, whether it's our health, whether it's our house or our car, our food, our money in the bank, whatever it may be, if we could just understand that it comes from Him. Because all good things come from Him. So how is it that we can honor Him? And so Solomon says with our possessions. So I'm thinking that Solomon is he's talking about in some ways money and finances. And you know, the Bible speaks about money and finances in several places. You can read a lot about it. Now, I'm certainly not a financial advisor. I wouldn't pretend to be, but I would just say this from experience. The greatest investment, the greatest financial investment that a person can invest in is giving 10% to the work of the Lord, or give a tithe. Now, the word tithe, you probably heard of that word. It actually means a tenth. So the greatest advice that I could give someone is to give 10% to the work of the Lord. Now, why would we do that? Well, first of all, it's a great investment for our own life here, right down here. And not only that, but it's a way that we can invest for the life to come. You know, Jesus said, don't lay up treasures here on earth, but lay them up in heaven. We can actually invest for the life to come. And that would be a good way. How else does it benefit? It certainly benefits the persons that we give to. There are people that really need. They need support, prayer support, financial support, like missionaries and these organizations for the homeless, and they're feeding people. Listen, it benefits them, but you know who benefits the most that when we give? We do. There's not anybody that benefits more than us. We benefit from it, and so it's a great investment. What does it do when we give? Well, what happens is it's an act of faith. Now, faith, a lot of people think faith and trust is easy, but it's not as easy as sometimes people think. Because when we do that, as I mentioned last time, sometimes we're kind of giving up control, and that's not an easy thing to do. So when we give, let's say when we give 10% or even more, it's an act of faith. And what we're doing is we're actually trusting God that God is going to take care of us. And not only is He going to take care of us, but He's going to cause the 90% or the amount that's left over to go further than we could actually use all of it by holding on to it. It's not a good thing to hold on to onto your possessions. Be a person that's a giver. And so He tells us to do that. And if we'll do that, He says He'll bless us for it. Now, in fact, verse 10 actually says that God will bless us for it. He says this, He says that your barns may be filled and your vats may overflow with new wine. Now, it's hard for me to interpret that any other way, that God will bless us in a financial way. So these are great pieces of advice. Now let's look at the last two verses, that is verses 11 and 12, and read those. Now these are different than the other two. Each one of these pieces of advice are different. So he says, my son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord. Hey, how about that? He says, nor detest His correction, for whom the Lord loves, He corrects, just as a father the son in whom He delights. Now, it's pointed out in the Bible, you can read it and see that the relationship that we have to God, because He's our Heavenly Father, is very similar to the relationship with parents and children. So what parent is there that wouldn't discipline their children? Hey, listen, if you love your children, you're going to discipline your children. If you love them, a good parent is not going to let a child just go do whatever they please and whatever they want. Listen, that's a recipe for disaster. So it takes time to do that. Discipline is a lot harder than just letting them go. And I kind of think that's the way God is. He loves us. And since He loves us, He loves us too much just to let us go and do wrong. So when we do wrong, He's gonna discipline us. Sometimes we get a spanking, if you will. If you can take that, a little spanking from the Lord. And so that's really good advice. So what's God's part? God's part, He loves us. He's watching over us. He's trying to correct us when we get out of line. But what's our part? Listen, Solomon says that we're not, let me read that again. He says for us, he says, don't detest his correction. Now, what does that mean? It means, listen, when God, if we could just learn to take it and say, you know what, this is for my good. This is going to help me. And not rebel against the discipline, or because He's doing it because He loves us. Anyway, these are great. I think these are wonderful. I told you when we began this study in the book of Proverbs that it was just chock full of advice that we could live by. And what we've covered today are some really, really good pieces of advice. If we could do them, and there's a benefit from them. Thank you so much. Hey, listen, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great week, and I hope you can join us again next time.